Next game we got BYU at Texas Tech. Unfortunately, I bet on this game and I bet on BYU. They've been proving me wrong all season. I was just tired of being on the losing side. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give the Cougs a chance and I'm going to put some money on this game. And I'm going to pick them outright on the podcast as my dog. Well, I guess we didn't do call the dogs, but if we did, they would have been my dog of the week. They were minus 10 or plus 10 and a half in this game. They come out super flat offensively in this one. They virtually did nothing the whole game. Um, the player of the game, in my opinion, was Texas Tech's field goal kicker. Stone Harrington went 5 for 5 on field goals, nailing a couple really long ones. 2 for 2 on extra points, and absolutely carried them to a victory here because the offense low-key kind of struggled against BYU's defense, which I figured they probably would struggle. It would just kind of be more on the terms of them maybe turning the ball over a couple times and getting a couple big sacks, putting them behind the chains. That's not what happened. They actually protected the quarterback relatively decent in this game. I mean, I think they might have had like 3 sacks on Baron Morton, which isn't great, but it wasn't horrible. They were able to string together a couple decent offensive drives that resulted in like 2 touchdowns, lots of field goals. BYU ended up turning over the ball 3 times in this game, getting 0 turnovers in return, finishing -3 in the turnover battle. That sums up the game to me. I think you look at this matchup before they played and you think, okay, I bet the winning team probably wins in the turnover margin for sure and is able to get pressure on the quarterback. BYU lost the turnover margin. They did get a little pressure on the quarterback, but it wasn't enough to really change this game. I thought that Caleb Douglas's touchdown early in the game, like after how BYU had been playing offensively, was kind of like, okay, BYU's got to score touchdowns. If they cannot score touchdowns in this first half, they are going to get way too far behind. And it's just, they're not going to have a chance. And that's exactly what happened. Texas Tech kept driving down the field, chewing clock and kicking field goals, got up to 26-0 at one point.
The turnover stats were very surprising because coming into this game, Texas Tech was one of the teams that turned the ball over the most in the nation, actually. And BYU had one of the best turnover margins in the country, so that was a big surprise. And I feel like Texas Tech really proved in this game why their transfer class was like number two,
I
wasn't
think they
it?
might have
Number
been
or
number
number
two or number
one.
one. LSU might have had more, actually. I think they had more players. Texas Tech had more high profile guys, though.
But they played like the team you would expect with that kind of a transfer class in this game. I mean, they just absolutely shut down BYU's offense, and with how bad their defense was last year, just crazy they were able to transform it like this.
Yeah, I think that absolutely had the biggest advantage in this game was Texas Tech and their defensive line, their linebacking core. They just bottled up Bear Bachmeier and company in this game, which I thought that Bear Bachmeier was probably going to play well. I've watched how Sam Levitt played against this team, and I thought to myself, well, Bear Bachmeier hasn't played a bad game really all season. I fully anticipate him to have a pretty good game if they win. And he didn't play terrible, but there just was not much open down the field. They really didn't have much time to throw. The run game never got going at all, which is a problem. LJ Martin got bottled up, and I think Texas Tech ended up being able to run the ball pretty well in this one. Cameron Dickey had like 140 total yards. He's been a solid player that came on early in the season, which I don't think anybody really saw him being the player he's been up to this point. This game did surprise me. I genuinely thought if Texas Tech won this game, it would be really close. BYU has been competitive in every single game, and they've obviously won all of them up to this point. But sometimes they start a little slow. It takes them a minute. I kept telling Landon, I'm like, they're gonna get going. Just give them a quarter, they'll get going, and it just never happened. So I'm not gonna bet on BYU again this season. Thankfully, I think I'm starting to see a trend where we get to these points with teams where we're really down on them. They prove us wrong for a little while, and it finally gets to the point where it's like, okay, we probably should start betting on this team. They're proving us wrong a lot. Or I don't want to be on the losing side of this because I want to pick them to lose. Everything in me was saying, yeah, Texas Tech probably should take care of business and win at home here. But I was thinking of every scenario possible for BYU to take this win to convince myself that it was going to happen. I thought the points were too much here, which they ended up not being the case. And this is probably the third or fourth time this season I've rode with a team solely because I've been picking against them.
It's 2 weeks in a row of Big 12 games that hosted game day with big spreads, and both of them ended up being covered.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. And I think we talked about this before. Just Vegas typically, when they have spreads like this, that it almost doesn't make that much sense. There's a reason why it's the way that it is.
Vegas is smart.
Vegas, okay, I saw Lane Kiffin say something about this the other day. They were talking about, I guess it was a certain matchup. And Lane referenced how Vegas clearly, it was about the playoffs, I think, and how they rank teams. He's like, if you really want to know, you need to just ask Vegas because they're, I'd say, 8 or 9 out of 10 times going to be really close on stuff, especially outright wins and who's going to cover. So I probably should have been able to look at that and be like, okay, there's probably a reason for this. And a lot of times, dogs that are that big in games, like you're probably looking at like a 10% chance they even win outright. So I'm kind of surprised I ended up going with BYU, but I doubt I'll continue to go with them down the stretch. They do have an interesting game. I think they're playing TCU at night this week. There's a chance for upset potential there, but once again, I don't even want to pick a BYU game after this. This was so disappointing. But Texas Tech takes care of business here. Baron Morton has a pretty average performance, which I was hoping to see a little bit more from him this week if they were going to prove to be a solid playoff contender. I think they're probably going to be in. I think they'll win the Big 12 and make it in. I just don't think they got the offensive firepower to beat any of these really good teams.
Yeah, I'm not sure that they do either. But as for BYU, they're gonna have a really big game with Cincinnati coming up. Both those teams are 5-1. Them two and Texas Tech are the only teams in the Big 12 with one conference loss or less. So the winner of that game probably is going to rematch Texas Tech.
I think that's going to be really close. I'm looking forward to that. I'd like to see Texas Tech and Cincinnati play in the championship game. I'm sure Texas Tech will probably win, but it'd be really funny if Cincinnati ended up taking them down and going to the playoffs. Really crazy. But this game was not very great. I really did not enjoy watching what I was able to watch of this game. Texas Tech just really kind of chewed the clock and kicked field goals all game. So that's about all we got for this one.